Good evening and welcome to another edition of Tigers Roar, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, New Orleans, right here on Pelican Sports TV. I am Tommy Krysan, joined by Chris Landry, NFL scout and Fox Sports football analyst. 2 hours coming right at you live here on a Wednesday night on Pelican Sports TV, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, New Orleans, and of course streaming online at pelicansportstv.com. Chris, it's the first time we sit here with October on the calendar as it flipped over since we sat here last. LSU with a victory over Kentucky that we'll talk about, but you know, the college football season is starting to really take shape. You kind of know who's got a chance to do this and who looks like you're going to struggle to get better this year.
You know, after this week, most teams are going to be halfway through their season, including LSU. They'll be wrapping up. You think about that. The season gets here, and you can't wait to get here, and all of a sudden it's halfway through. And you're right. You're getting into the meat of your conference schedule so you start to see separation. You see who's had the good start, maybe who's a little bit vulnerable, who's maybe a little bit, Michigan that's really good 5-0, but you look on their schedule and you say, there are 4 losses still on that schedule, but you don't know. So it's a lot of fun this time of year.
It's kind of crazy because, the summertime drags along a little bit. And on radio, the phone calls start getting up in volume. You get more of them. TV, we get more emails, more people going to the Facebook page. And you get all anticipation of football getting here. And now, like you said, when we sit here next week, most teams are halfway through the regular season. Question for you, the guy who's been a coach. Does it ever slow up for the coach, or is it a blink of the eye, or the coach is just so consumed in the weekly routine and preparation that, they look up and, wow, it is Game 6?
It doesn't slow down. When you get your open date, if you have, most everybody has one, but if you get your open date, it changes a little bit that week, a little more focus on recruiting and a little bit of catch up on some things, and maybe a little bit, a day where you can have a little downtime, on Saturday, the game day when you don't have a
maybe spend a little extra time with the family.
Absolutely.
Or relax a little bit.
Absolutely. For example, the coaches after playing the Thursday night game, against Mississippi State had the Saturday that could maybe go to a soccer game or whatever is going on with their kids. But no, outside of that, it is for those coaches
it's full speed ahead.
Full speed ahead, and really from the time you start the 2-a-days until bowl time, it's it. Now, once you have the bowl gap between preparation, you got a lot of recruiting time, so you're doing different things, but it is full speed ahead. There's no question. There's no rest for the weary, as they say.
We've got a lot of stuff for you, as we do each and every week on Tigers Roar. Remind you, this is live on a Wednesday night from 8 to 10 p.m. If you're catching it on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, and one of the many outlets that pick up this program, we certainly appreciate you tuning in, and keep in mind you got a little replay going. On tonight's program, we'll have a quick recap of the 35-7 victory over Kentucky. We'll tell you about yet another LSU player that garnered an SEC award. We'll also get extensively into Florida. The Gators coming in banged up at quarterback. May see more than one quarterback Saturday afternoon in Tiger Stadium, but we'll have comments from Coach Miles and the players. We'll have Coach Muschamp's comments as well, and we'll get Chris Landry to really preview Florida offensively, defensively, and special teams. And then, of course, as always, we'll get into LSU and all the different things there, from the Jordan Jefferson story to Jarrett Lee, to the running backs, to Odell Beckham, to Tyrann Mathieu, getting mentioned in the same sentence with the word Heisman Trophy sometimes. We'll speak to Brian Lazar of TigerBait.com tonight. Brian able to be back with us. And we'll take our weekly run through the LSU athletic department. We got some volleyball and some soccer and some rings flashed around by some golf national individual champions. And we'll also get the Louisiana Sports Writers Association Weekly Players of the Week in college football in Louisiana. Got some repeat names on that as well. We do remind you, Monday through Friday, it's Pelican Sports Radio on the Score 1210 AM in Baton Rouge, the score1210.com. Chris Landry and me, Tommy Krysan, taking your phone calls, mixing it up. A couple of different guests during different portions of the week. A lot of fun. Monday through Fridays from 3 to 4 p.m. That does stream online at the score1210.com. And tomorrow, as we do each and every Thursday, it's an edition of the Chris Landry Show, where it's football, 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 college and pro all year round. Chris, give everybody a hint of what you'll have tomorrow on the Score 1210 AM, streaming online at the score1210.com on this week's edition of the Chris Landry Show.
Well, we'll certainly kind of take a look at the Florida Gators in this matchup as well. We're going to look at the Saints matchup this weekend as they've got another matchup in conference in their own division in Carolina. all the top college matchups and all the top NFL matchups. Some trends as the NFL season is a quarter through their schedule. Some trends I'm noticing around college football and the NFL. All the latest information. We'll have the updates as we'll talk about a little bit tonight, I'm sure, about the conference situation as it's looking more and more like Missouri is making a strong play to come to the SEC, and SEC appears with opening arms. So all the latest information, we'll get to that in the football hour.
And, of course, don't forget, immediately following the football game on Saturday afternoon, probably at about 5:45, maybe 6 o'clock, depends on the length of the game. When that game clock says 0:00, it is the Phones First WJBO Pelican Sports TV post-game show with Richard Condon and me, Tommy Krysan. That's on WJBO 1150 a.m. on your radio. If you're in the parking lot or you're in traffic heading home right after the game, get on the Phones First post-game show. WJBO also streams online at WJBO.com. And, of course, it's also live right here on Pelican Sports TV, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, and New Orleans, PelicanSportsTV.com. Find us on Facebook. That's a great way to keep up with all the activities of Pelican Sports TV, of course, known for the hunting, fishing, and outdoors programming, among many, many other types of programs. And it's the Facebook page, Pelican Broadcasting. You see the Twitter account at Pelican Sports. Got a YouTube page, which we put different things up that go on with Pelican Sports TV, but that's a great way to keep up with us. And you can always send an email to pelicanbroadcasting@gmail.com. That's the email address, simply stated, pelicanbroadcasting@gmail.com. Chris, before we go to break, we'll touch on the conference shuffle as we dubbed it a few weeks ago. I'm not 100% certain Missouri's coming into the SEC, but it looks like they're going to get out of the Big 12. When the president of Missouri, who's the chairman of the Big 12, he resigns from that post. He's been given full authority to find the best situation for the University of Missouri. And indications are they could be the 14th team in the SEC. Now, we don't know that that'll happen soon or in a week or in a month. We don't really know, but it could move quickly.
The only thing that's standing in the way is some of the legal ramifications, and I don't know what the contract says about the penalties and whether they can buy their way out of it and how much and time frame. Those are the things that are a little bit cloudy at this point. But the reality is the Big Ten is not interested in taking them on, and the SEC has already agreed to take them on privately. So that's where Missouri's headed. That's what they want to do. Now, whether it can be worked out legally, the SEC is going to deny that. They're going to say, well,
right,
we're not in. No, we can't do that. And then behind the scenes, they're trying to work to make the deal done, kind of like the A&M situation. But if it can be worked out legally, that's where it appears to be happening. And as you mentioned, probably soon that's going to be the 14th team. And it'll be interesting to see, obviously, where the Big 12 goes from there. Or if it's legally going to be too much of a hurdle now, then will Missouri kind of re-up and stay with the Big 12? But I would think, even though there's not a time frame being put on it, the Big 12 is trying to get everybody, all the band back together and agree to certain things in Tier 1, Tier 2 revenue sharing model for television. I would think they need to know from Missouri pretty quick whether they're in or out.
Right, and from a scheduling perspective, not just for football, that's probably the easiest schedule to work out, but from a scheduling perspective, if they're going to be the 14th team, sooner the better. Because, again, the football schedule, while that won't be as easy as just writing it on the grease board, it'll be easier to figure out than soccer, volleyball, men's basketball, women's basketball, the softball, the baseball, cross country, tennis, track. I mean, it's golf. It's never ending. There'll be a lot of hoops that'll have to get jumped through. So the more time to iron out that deal is better.
Well, and I think what we're headed towards, if we get this expansion and we get Missouri in, you're going to have 7 teams in each division. When we talked about this on radio today, we're heading down the road that we saw the Big 12 head down when they expanded the Big 8 in the Southwest Conference, where you're going to lose some of the natural rivalries. You mentioned today Alabama, Tennessee. Well, that's potentially going by the wayside, and that was for the maybe younger audience. Alabama, Tennessee was the bigger Alabama rivalry back in the old days,
right.
Bear Bryant,
yeah.
and then it became Auburn in the 60s. But prior to that, it was Auburn was just an afterthought. It was Alabama, Tennessee. So
well,
that could
wasn't
potentially
there
be
some
going down the road.
bad blood, Auburn, Alabama, the fact that for many years the games were played in Birmingham at Legion Field, and then Alabama said, well, we'll play you in Tuscaloosa, but we won't go to Auburn. Wasn't there a little gap
sure.
of time before they actually went to Jordan-Hare Stadium and played?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of bad blood. Of course, Bear Bryant, Bryant never called them Auburn. He called them the old Kyle schools.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't really, in the politically correct world today, that wouldn't go over.
No, probably
But
not.
no, obviously Auburn's really come into prominence really in the 50s and the 60s. But it was Tennessee, it was General Neyland and Coach Bryant. I mean, there were some big rivalries and some really hard, fierce rivalries. But why could that go away? Well, you start looking at who you're going to play. If you start splitting, what would end up happening is Auburn would end up moving to the East. That's the plan right now in the SEC if Missouri comes in. But then that creates some imbalances because you take a Missouri and a Texas A&M, put them in the West, and you take a Auburn program that's really good, that's better than both of those two programs, and move them in the East. Now you got what I call 4 national championship caliber programs in the SEC in the East, and only 2 in the West. That makes it a little bit more intriguing.
Yeah, but those things go in cycles too.
Well, it does.
7 years from now, it could be tipped the other way.
But the reality is, A&M I think can be what an Arkansas is. Missouri potentially could be. But I think that could create some problems. Yeah. And if the long-term rumors come about, which you're talk that if the Big 12 eventually comes apart at the seams down the road, that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State would be the next 2 targets for the SEC if we go to the mega conferences, which would be interesting. So what you got is a lot of Western teams, and I think eventually you're going to have to split it up where it makes good equality. Because right now you got Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, 3 elite programs. I'm not saying they're elite now, but they traditionally, historically, they're national championship caliber programs, and I think it has a good balance. I think we could see that shifting if this realignment does continue.
A whole other topic for a whole other day, but I'll go out on a limb and say that within 6 years, we're either going to have a college football playoff in the Division 1A level, for lack of a better word, or we're going to end up with national champions that have 3 or maybe 4 losses.
Well, here's what we're looking at. Remember 2014, put that on the calendar. That's when the BCS runs out. So keep in mind, as all of this conference realignment talk continues, does it continue or does it slow down? And how does it coincide with that 2014 date? Because if we get into the mega conferences and we got a new BCS, what we're going to have is a rewritten of rules where you don't have just you can only have 2 teams from a conference. You could have more, and we may.
Well, Mike Slive has already chimed in about that.
As we get bigger,
as we
get bigger conferences,
right.
It's just so. Keep that in mind. We have to. This moves at a glacier pace, not at a rapid pace. But keep in mind, 2014 is when that next BCS contract comes out, and then they decide where they go with some form of a BCS or some form of a playoff.
When we come back, we'll recap LSU's victory over Kentucky 35-7 last Saturday morning/afternoon in Tiger Stadium. Chris Landry, Tommy Krysan, spread the roar. You're watching Tigers Roar on Pelican Sports TV, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, and New Orleans.
Hello, I'm Rohan Davey, and you're watching Pelican Sports TV.
Hi, I'm attorney Kerry Bryson. My law firm focuses specifically on helping people try to solve their IRS tax problems. Lately, so many new out-of-state companies are popping up claiming that if you send them money, they can resolve your IRS problems. Well, what happens if they don't? Do you hire an attorney? Maybe you should start with a local attorney that's already handled hundreds of IRS cases right here in Louisiana. When you hire the Bryson Law Firm, you won't be speaking long distance or sending money to some out-of-town high-pressure salesman. You'll meet with us in person at our office right here in Baton Rouge. Your first visit is completely free and confidential, and we'll tell you on the spot exactly how much it'll cost. So if you're hiring a company to resolve your IRS wage levies, bank levies, or tax liens, check their reputation first, then call me, Kerry Bryson, or go to brysonlawfirm.com. If you're a Louisiana resident and you have an IRS problem, hire a Louisiana attorney, Kerry Bryson.
Hello, my name is Debbie. Welcome to Debbie's Bridal, a formal affair.
Come see the many great lines we carry in bridal, bridesmaids, mothers, flower girls, tuxes, and more. We also carry over 25 top designer lines in debutante gowns, Mardi Gras, pageant, and prom. Come meet me and my staff with over 30 years of bridal and pageant experience. Debbie's Bridal, a formal affair, Burnside and Gonzales, where service matters.
The family dental practice of Dr. Farrell Fruget Jr. and our highly trained staff are dedicated to providing care and treatment to our patients of all ages in all aspects of dental care. 23 years of experience and advanced training in cosmetic and restorative dentistry, TMJ, and treatment of snoring and sleep apnea allows Dr. Fruget to assist you in achieving the best in dental health. Call us today at 292-9700 to schedule your initial evaluation, because we know how to make you smile.
LSU defeated Kentucky 35-7 in the morning kickoff game, and everybody likes to say it doesn't matter to the players and the coaches. I think it makes a difference. I wrote that at sportsnola.com. Here's a look at the stats. A lot of the yardage for Kentucky kind of came near the end of the game, a significant portion of it in the fourth quarter, and you see the turnover deal: one turnover for Kentucky, none for LSU. Not surprising when you look at those stats to see the result. 5 sacks by the LSU defense. That was a positive.
Well, it was a game a little bit slow starting. I thought that it wasn't the best effort, and I think it was probably one of the more sloppy performances in all 3 facets of the game. But I do think they kind of worked their way in the game. We see one of the early passes, but 18 first-half passes, only 1 pass after a 21-0 lead. But this was certainly the biggest one, and what a great play by Odell Beckham. A little bit looking like Todd Kinchin running across the field against Texas.
Using all the green grass.
Absolutely, that was one of those 220-yard touchdown runs there. But really had some trouble here with some missed tackles, some poor run fits. But for the most part, they just overwhelmed Kentucky. Kentucky, not a very talented team. We talked about it last week that they were going to struggle, and offensively they had no real answer. They tried a couple of quarterback positions. We see Tyrann Mathieu with a great play here. You've got a quarterback situation there at Kentucky that you're going to have a pocket guy, not a lot of movement. They get a touchdown here, but they just couldn't make enough plays consistently, and eventually, LSU was able to wear them down. But I thought that the offensive line, you see some of the effects with the injuries. I thought they missed T-Bob Hebert. I thought they missed Spencer Ware in the second half of the game. Jarrett Lee wasn't particularly effective in this game. I thought there were certainly 4 drops, 3 other balls that could have been caught, and then a couple of other catches that were made to kind of save them a little bit. Odell Beckham was outstanding, no question. I thought Alfred Blue did a really good job, and certainly that young man's gone through an awful lot with his family situation with the losing of their home in the fire, so we send him the best. Jordan Jefferson looked good in the game, running the football, so it wasn't a real crisp performance, but you see the personnel advantage just kind of wear down Kentucky eventually in this game.
Here's some comments from Coach Les Miles about the Kentucky game and looking forward to the University of Florida coming to town.
I can tell you that we felt like Saturday, Kentucky, it was certainly a 11:30 or so start. I felt like the stands were just as full and just as loud, and the blue skies over Tiger Stadium. It was I enjoyed that day, and I really want to thank our fan base for being there and making noise and being involved. So in the game against Kentucky, I felt like our offense started a little bit slow. There's some things that they did a little bit differently, and it required us to make some adjustments. That went kind of smoothly. We felt like there was opportunity, ample time, based on how that defense was playing, to do the things that we needed to do. But again, after we got on pace, good balance in the rush and the pass, and a game without a turnover, the opportunity to be in a plus category there certainly makes a difference. We had a couple drop passes that certainly could have allowed Jarrett to have a little bit more productive statistic day. We have to work on, putting the grip on that ball. The defense, again, really was the tale of the day. They play with great intensity start to finish, and when that happens, that just means the opponent has very little chance to travel the length of the field. And they've given up 156 total yards, 89 yards rushing, and 66 passing. Anytime that you throttle a team like that, your opportunities to have victory are very increased. Sam Montgomery's the defensive lineman of the week with 6 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack plus. That defense played well and certainly gave us what we needed in the Kentucky game. This is the actual anniversary of the first night game in Tiger Stadium, 80 years ago this Saturday. And it was Spring Hill, and we defeated Spring Hill 35-0. So I just kind of wanted to, Spring Hill being one of the dominant powers in college football, it's amazing how things have changed. So glad to be back in Tiger Stadium, 2 games in a row. We get to play in front of our fans and friends. The gold game is it's going to be interesting to see Tiger Stadium in gold.
As Coach Miles mentioned, Chris, Sam Montgomery was named the SEC Defensive Player of the Week for his contributions in the game. 6 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, a sack and a half. Sam Montgomery continues to play well and play consistent.
And that doesn't even tell half the story. He was double-teamed the majority of the time, and he did that fighting through double-team. He and Michael Brockers have graded out better than anybody on the defense, play in and play out. When you consider that, not splash plays, you see the 2 tackles for losses, 1.5 sacks, but the ability to seal the edge in the run game was pivotal, and doing it against double teams, he has played very well. Of course, he was the best defensive lineman on LSU's team last year prior to the injury, and he has been outstanding. He and Brockers are special type players, and they've got good depth, but those 2 guys are the impact players that draw the most protection and issues for opposing offensive lines.
And that's certainly something Florida will have to take into consideration when they prepare their game plan for this Saturday. Again, it is a 2:30 kickoff, not quite 11:20, but 2:30, which will be
that's right.
actually for the next 2 weeks, because when they go on the road in Knoxville the week after, same thing.
It's what I say. Remember last week we talked about, hey, listen, I know it's 11:30, and I know from a fan standpoint you may not get up for it, but you can't. That's an excuse for players. You just brought it up. It's not going to be that much different. You're going to be playing 2:30 games, and in this league, the way television dictates, you're gonna be playing 2:30 games in the prime time game. You mentioned the next 2 weeks. We're certainly going to play against Alabama in 2:30. So adjust your body clock. You better be ready to go. There's not a whole lot of difference between 11 and 2:30. So.
Yep, and the fans have to adjust. More importantly, the players.
Right.
They're the ones that got to execute.
Right, the players are the ones that are factored. The fans, fans will do what they do, but fans have to be prepared.
I heard a high school coach make a comment last week. We get 10 games to play. We got to be ready for all of them. Well, obviously, college gets 12 on the regular season slate. You got to be ready for them all, no matter what time it is. And as you said, don't use it as an excuse. 11:20.
You got to build in an excuse, and even kind of less alluding to it. Well. It's early. No. That's
go play the game.
Excuse.
Do what you're supposed to do.
Go play the game. Do what you're supposed to do. And I think that's everybody's. Well, it's an early game. No, they didn't play well, and they just weren't ready to play. And there's no excuses. To me, it's no different than they played at night game. That you got to be ready to play. And I thought again, their physical dominance was the key and wore down Kentucky, and I thought defensively they did a good job against, again, not a very good Kentucky offensive team, but now a very, a better opponent, a more athletic opponent this week. They're going to have to play better this week. I still think that, it's a big edge that LSU has personnel-wise, but they're going to have to play better. Sloppy plays will negate
fuel the other team.
Absolutely give more big plays, explosive plays. Florida's got 52 explosive plays thus far this year, so they can take advantage of sloppy play more than Kentucky ever could.
Speaking of Florida, when we come back, we'll go in depth on a Florida preview, getting comments from Coach Miles, some of the LSU players, comments from Coach Will Muschamp of the Gators, and of course the analysis of Chris Landry. We'll come back with that and more. Spread the roar. You're watching Tigers Roar on Pelican Sports TV, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, and New Orleans.
Hi, I'm Joe Horn, and you're watching Pelican Sports TV.
BetterBatonRougeJobs.com has been extremely beneficial for the TM Automotive Group. And what stands out to us, it's easy to use, not only for us, but it's easy for the applicants. And it's the quality of applicants that we get. It's timely. We post something in the morning. By that afternoon, we have double-digit applicants. And again, it's the quality of the applicants.
Employers, now is a great time to hire, recruit, and look for potential new employees.
BetterBatonRougeJobs.com. It's free for job seekers and great for business.
You're on the same flight.
We'll be on the same plane regardless.
Yeah, what was your day? Work. Anything together? Do we know that?
Got it.
Thanks, Dave.
The big, brilliant, thin Samsung Infuse 4G. Only from the network of possibilities, AT&T.
Pelican Sports TV presents Pelican Radio. Get ready to mix it up with me, Tommy Krysan, and Chris Landry, weekday afternoons from 3 to 4 p.m. Pro sports, college sports, high school sports, and much more. On the Score 1210 a.m. and on the internet at thescore1210.com.
40 years, 4 decades, nearly half a century. That's how long the citizens of Greater Baton Rouge have chosen Richards Honda. A simple, sincere, and honest process.
Louisiana's oldest and most experienced Honda dealership for over 40 years, Richards Honda.
It is the week on the schedule when LSU plays Florida. Always grabs attention nationally and, of course, across the conference. It's been LSU's permanent opponent in the structured schedule that exists as of today in the Southeastern Conference. And many an outstanding game played between these two schools for a very, very long time. Here's some comments about the Florida game from Coach Les Miles and some of his players.
Florida is a very, very talented team. They're well coached, well prepared. They're 4-1. The head coach, Will Muschamp, certainly is doing a great job in his first year. And Charlie Weiss is the offensive coordinator there. Again, is doing a very strong, very capable job there. Their offense is dangerous. And again, I don't put too much stock into a loss against a very strong, very talented Alabama team. I recognize that there are players at every position and that they're well prepared and coached, and it's going to be a great matchup in Tiger Stadium.
I had a big game last year against Florida, but they're coming here now, so got a little. Defensively, they're got some people back and a lot of similar stuff, but they're still a good ball club.
It's always a rival between us and Florida, so I mean the matchup is going to be a wonderful matchup. We don't think for 1 second it's going to be easy just because of what happened to them last weekend. We got to prepare hard, fast, physical.
They're beat up right now. When you play a game like that, especially against a team like Bama, that's a physical game. And, we just got through playing a SEC team, and we're kind of beat up, ourselves. So I imagine how they feel, over there in Florida. So it's going to play to our benefit, them playing that style of game. They only have, 4 or 5 days to recover from. So we just got to, be happy that we didn't have to play Bama last week, and just kind of use that to our benefit, and just kind of go out there and play the LSU style of football.
We know it's another SEC game. They're going to come here and try to give us their all. We know that every SEC game is going to be a hard task. Like when we played Mississippi State, they came in and gave us all, and the score was tight. So, they consider this like, a rivalry game. They come in here, they be amped up, and we be amped up too.
And after them just losing to Alabama, I know they're going to try to come in here and fight for victory.
You know, after the game, you know, Charlie and I sat down, and he said, you know, I just don't know if we gave Jeff much of a chance because of the game plan and the experience that John has in running the offense. And, you know, it's tough when you're getting ready to play a defense like Alabama or LSU, and you're preparing to have your starter to play the game, and then something happens. And you got to be able to adjust and adapt to the situation and do the best job for your football team. So certainly knowing the situation and the inexperience we have at the position and the preparation that goes into that and what we carry in the game is key.
Charlie Weiss, you know, he's a great offensive coordinator, you know, spent some time in the NFL. So, you know, if we could go out there and, you know, make some plays on him, you know, I think it'll definitely get us some cool points.
Florida Gators are coached by Will Muschamp, as you may have seen in the graphic before. Did spend a few years on the staff at LSU before moving on to the Miami Dolphins and other places. And now he's at the University of Florida in his first year as head coach, where he took over for Urban Meyer. Chris, your read on Coach Will Muschamp and the job he's done so far, and then your assessment of him going forward as a coach of the Gators.
Well, I think he's a really good coach. I've known Will for a while and actually talked to Nick about him when he brought him over as a young coach here at LSU. He's a very bright guy. He's learned a lot of football under Nick Saban and has really been a, you know, obviously when you work for as good a coach as Nick and you're able to pick up and learn and grow under him, it's really benefited his career. I think obviously a native of Gainesville, played at Georgia. Very interesting dynamic there, the combination of those two. He's going to do a great job there. Listen, last week was a tough game. You're seeing offensively they want to do a lot of what Alabama and LSU wants to do offensively. They want to be a little bit more multiple, but they do not have the personnel to do it. So they're doing things differently to fit the personnel, and I think that his defense is playing hard. I don't think while there's talent there, it's not quite built the way Will eventually will get it. He's a good recruiter. He works hard. Obviously, they're located in a place where they can get a lot of talent. I think he's going to do a good job. It's going to always be difficult because I think that this team is not nearly as good as the one that was in the swamp last week against Alabama. I mean, Alabama kind of is sending a beat-up team right now, and I'm not just talking about Brantley. This is a team that's going to struggle and probably lose 2 in a row and then end up having a couple of games that are going to define their season. But I think Will do a great job there and give him 2 or 3 recruiting classes, and they're going to be on their way to being Florida again, which is, you know, the Florida, Alabama, you know, LSU type of program where the sky's the limit for them.
Well, and they certainly still going to have a lot of talent. I mean, they got some speed with Dempson, Rainey. We know that. And, you know, they got a lot of football players on that team, and you know, they may not have all the pieces to the puzzle today that they'll have in 2 or 3 years, but certainly Bama beat them up, in particular at the quarterback spot. I read today where, you know, Charlie Weiss, the offensive coordinator, former Notre Dame coach, former guy in New England with Belichick, you know, he may play more than one quarterback side. He may even play 3 different guys.
Well, you'll see them do a couple of different things. I think at the quarterback position, I think you'll see some wildcat with Trey Burton. I think Driscoll's going to get the majority of the snaps, but they've got 2 true freshmen that are going to probably see some, you know, actions. I think Charlie's playing a little subterfuge. I think he's going to give Driscoll most of the snaps. But listen, they're very young there. They're not as good on the offensive line, and they're not as deep. There's some talent there, no question. But to play at the level where, and I think we saw them in the early part of their schedule, they dominated Kentucky in a way that LSU didn't quite do. I mean, they were more impressive. But against the Alabamas, against the LSUs, this is where I think Florida's at a different level, and they've slipped a little bit because they don't have a power running attack. Well, those are elements that they're going to build in the future, but this year they're going to have some growing pains.
And we'll take a look now at the Florida offensive scheme. We got comments from Coach Miles, the players, and some audio from Coach Will Muschamp talking about Florida offense. Obviously a little bit different now with Charlie Weiss putting his stamp on the offense. Here are these comments.
Their offense, the quarterback got hurt. I don't know if he's back or not. Brantley, but his backup Driscoll certainly is a very, very talented freshman and capable, and in my opinion, he will give them, if Brantley's not back, Driscoll will give them every opportunity to compete extremely well.
First of all, we have an outstanding offensive staff, and Charlie does a great job. And we've prepared ourselves, for injuries at all positions, including the quarterback position, throughout training camp. And now you're getting into a point in the season where we have an injury, and it's unfortunate for John because he was playing so well. He's playing his best football since he's been at Florida. So very disappointed for him. But we got to move on and understand that he's not going to play this week, and our guys need to accept the challenge, not just at the position, but as a team as a whole. Defensively, we've got to play better. Special teams, we've got to play better. And offensively, around the quarterback position, we need to play better.
There's some things that playing different quarterbacks gives you, and challenges that must be met. I think we're very comfortable. We've faced a number of offenses to this point, and the good news about a defense that's been tested over a wide range of attacks, they can make easily an adjustment that fits the opponent. So. I'm not. The point that I'm making is that if a quarterback, were to take the field that we didn't anticipate, we'd be comfortable in making some strong sideline adjustments that would allow us to defend them, no matter which guy it is. But I think there's some similarities between Brantley and Driscoll, and I think they're both very talented. We're preparing to see their best, and frankly, we hope that none of their guys are injured.
Got to prepare. I mean, I know our coach is going to come up with a wonderful game plan because, I mean, they probably really don't know too much. I guess we're going to find out today if he's going to be back or not. So, I mean, we just got to come out every day and prepare fast, physical, and hard.
Speed. There's some speedy guys, they, like I said, when you got, an athletic quarterback on the field, whether he's a wildcat quarterback or a true quarterback, it has extra play on the field. And the defense has to count for, what they say, extra man. So when you can do stuff like that, it really kind of puts the defense at a, kind of in a weird situation.
Well, it's much more diverse than it was, certainly, in the previous regime. Successful, certainly the Tim Tebow, that offense was so designed for that style of quarterback that, and it was a very, very obviously, successful style of offense, but it was really one style of offense. And I think what happens here is you're seeing the ability to be two back, to be one back, to throw it efficiently from both, personnel groups, and occasionally put in a little wildcat and let them play a little wildcat offense. And I think Charlie has done a great job in coordinating the spectrum of variation in offense.
I want to take a look at quarterback Jeff Driscoll's statistics. 6'4", 235, big guy, 7 for 16 as he was thrown into the mix after the injury to Brantley last week. Chris, what can you tell us about Jeff Driscoll?
Well, I remember him, obviously just in this game, but just in a little bit of the fall practice on tape. Then I remember him from high school. It's really a highly recruited kid and a very talented kid. Good arm, good quickness. He's got some size. His body's going to fill out. He'll be a 255-pound guy before it's all said and done. He just doesn't have experience, and it's difficult growing up in this league, particularly against these type defenses that are as fast. So I think what they're going to do with him is they're going to try to move the launch point. They're not going to get him in a consistent 5 or 7 step drop or 3 or 5 step drop. They're going to move him. They're going to roll him. They're going to boot. They're going to run some wildcat, but they're going to run some speed option. They're going to try to neutralize LSU speed as best they can by changing that launch point, making it difficult to figure out where he's going to be. And you got to mix it up. They're going to have to be able to throw to the perimeter some. They're going to have to find a way to run the football some. And this is not a really good interior run team and a strong run blocking team. So a lot of misdirections, a lot of speed option, I think, is what you're going to see.
You've kind of been touching on it, but the next question, number one, Florida's offense is still going to have speed, especially with Rainey and Demps. But they're going to change some things for Driscoll and try to put him in position where he can be the most successful at what he's best at doing. Whether or not we see another guy, that remains to be seen. But offensively, it almost feels like, LSU is going to try to confuse Driscoll. They're going to try to force Florida to see if he can throw and be successful, and or can Florida establish the run. Now, the LSU defense was fabulous last week, but that was Kentucky. Florida is much better than Kentucky.
Well, yeah, and they got more speed, and you see it. They can get to the edge, and so the real key for LSU is how do you defend speed like this? Well, you got to play good contain. You got to make sure that you contain the outside and force it to the inside into the pursuit. So that's what you have to do. And I think what they're going to do, Florida that is, with Driscoll, they're going to run some speed option. They're going to try to get the ball out of his hands quickly by design. They're going to give him some half-field reads. He can't do what Brantley could in terms of going through a couple read progressions and having a better feel for the passing game because he doesn't have the experience. LSU's going to try to combat that with a lot of pressure, a lot of mudding of the pocket in the interior, kind of get into his face, kind of cloud his vision a little bit. But I think that Florida, what they're going to try to do is run a lot of misdirection, try to get these guys out in space, and try to slow down and neutralize LSU's speed advantage that they have by getting them in what we call confusing positions, getting them to overreact to some misdirection looks. That's what Florida wants to be able to do. I think the screen game is going to be a big part of it. Simple throws, getting the ball to your playmakers in space is what they want to do, and they're going to have to protect the young quarterback a little bit from a decision-making standpoint. You can't have them sit there in 5- and 7-step drops against good pass rush. And when they know that he's going to be there in a 5- or 7-step drop, you got to move that launch point and make it a little bit easier for him.
Chris, talk about it, if you will, the offensive coordinator for Florida, Charlie Weiss. I mean, long time known as an offensive guru, guy that can really work the game. I'm sure that in time in Florida, when they can get more players that fit his complete system, Florida will move to that. But number one, talk about Charlie Weiss as an offensive coordinator, and we know he's been a head coach. We know the Notre Dame thing. But your assessment and evaluation of Charlie Weiss now and what he can potentially do for Florida going forward.
Well, he's good with quarterbacks. He's also good with creating good offensive balance. Now, yes, Florida has talent. Yes, Florida has speed. But they, under the previous regime, and they did a great job there, but they were built on the zone read. And so that style is conducive. I mean, the players that they have is conducive to that style. Well, the quarterbacks that they have and what they want to do offensively is not going to be conducive to being real balanced offensively. They have no power element. You know, the tight ends are more H-back type guys. So one of the things I think they'll do is work the tight end a little bit more and work more misdirection. As 2 or 3 years from now, we're talking about Florida, they're going to be more balanced offensively, more downhill run, more split back stuff, more online tight end, and a lot of different, more multiple. Now it's going to be built around, hey, we got to get the speed guys, a lot of misdirection, some speed option. We got to work the passing game, but you got some limitations there. So I think what you see, he'll do a good job with what he has, but I think you saw it last week. Had a really good game plan early. They're going to attack early. Alabama was aggressive and press man. They scored on the first drive, got up ahead, got the 10-0 lead. Exactly what you wanted to do. Alabama really did a good job adjusting to the zone blitz a little more, and Florida doesn't have multiple options to be able to beat you outside of what they have is just the perimeter speed. So they're a little bit easier to defend, even though they got speed, because they're not real multiple in what they do. If you can secure the edge in the run game, take good pursuit angles, tackle well in space, they're not going to beat you by throwing it 35 times.
Let's take a look now at some comments about the speed of Florida. It seems like every year when you talk about Florida, you talk about speed. Here's some comments from Coach Miles and the players about Florida's offensive speed.
There.
Well, I think they have great speed. I think they have great athleticism. They're a very physical team. I think they're as talented as any team we've faced thus far, and I think that's a pretty easy thing to say. They have good players at every position.
I mean, we just got to prepare faster, too. We got to be faster. We got to come at them even stronger, even harder. So, I mean, we didn't win against speed like West Virginia, Oregon. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to be that hard of a task for us.
They got their two most explosive guys, offense, in Dempsey and Rainey. So I'm pretty much sure, the game plan is going to be circled around those guys. So, whatever the game plan is for this week, we just have to execute it, and perfect it, come Saturday. Those guys are little guys, one thing about little guys, those guys are hard to catch. So, those guys definitely have some speed, to get up the field, and definitely bust one here and there. So it's really about us just playing assignment football, and just making those sure tackles.
Well, the Florida offense, if they are going to be effective, it'll be because of Jeff Demps and Chris Rainey. Let's take a look at some of the stats. First for Jeff Demps, as you heard, he's not a big guy, although 191 is not a bad weight on a body that's only 5'7", but he can catch the ball. He'll run the ball. They try to get him in some reverse action, some jet sweep type action, but they're going to get him the ball in a short pass and try to get him in space so he can create something.
Well, you can work him in the screen. You can work him on the little short crossers, and you just get him out in the perimeter. You see him hit the edge here so quickly. They're so explosive, both of these guys. They get to the edge so well. Seeing a split back shotgun situation there, they do a good job just at the underneath handoff. Just the ability to get to the corner so quickly, and they turn upfield that if you are not set and secure the edge in the run game, you got a problem there because they can beat you to the corner. So it's small, yes, very explosive. And I think that they can be very effective in the screen game if utilized, and that's something that I know they're trying to work on a little bit to try to neutralize some of the rush that their offensive line is having a hard time picking up. You see here the ability to change direction a little bit, get to the corner. That was an inside run. He turned to the outside. You see that.
They don't need much of a crease.
And you see that get to the corner, and obviously you're dealing with a little bit different athletes here. LSU's got a little bit better athletes than Kentucky does, but you got to take good angles against these guys. If you take poor pursuit angles, it's about position football when you play against speed guys. You can't be the hero. You can't try to make the play. You have to do your job, and if you do your job and secure the edge in the perimeter of the run game, and you can spill the run inside, you have good team success.
Do your job, trust your teammates to do their job. Now, and it doesn't end with Jeff Demps, and not only do they have to keep an eye on him, but they'll also have to be aware of Chris Rainey, who also possesses incredible speed and an ability to run with the football. Same height, not quite as heavy as Demps, but he's going to touch it more running the football and receiving, I should say, receptions. But anyway, he's a threat too.
He's got 17 runs of 10 yards or more. I mean, he's been really explosive. They've got 52 explosive runs and explosive plays. That's 10 per game this season. Now, okay, I give you that. Let's also understand very little of them were against Alabama. That was Kentucky and some of the weaker opponents. So keep that in mind. I'm curious to see how these guys go up against good defenses, but they're going to have success. I don't know about this week, but certainly they've got explosive playmaking ability, and I think keeping those guys hemmed in inside is really important.
You mentioned misdirection and screen plays. LSU's defense is considered to be a fast defense. Isn't a great way to attack a fast defense is try to get them going the wrong way? You try to get them going to the near boundary, and then you're going back the other way or vice versa. You try to make them commit or move to a spot, and then you counter that.
Yeah, because they've got great speed in pursuit of the ball, but if you get in misdirection where you false step and you go in the wrong direction, then they're going the opposite direction. The speed doesn't matter at that point. So it's really important that assignment football is really key here. And I thought that one of the things that Alabama did well, and Alabama's a different style of defense. They're more physical up front. They leveraged the run game very well, the perimeter run game. They forced it inside. They spilled it to the inside to the flow of the defense. LSU's got to do that similar, even though they're not as physical. They've got to be very good up front, making sure that they get upfield and secure the perimeter of the run game, bounce it outside, and force that into the pursuit of the defense. There's no question that misdirections get you going one way and get you flow, and you offensively counteract against that flow, and that's what they want to do, and feel they have a little bit more chance of success against LSU because LSU's a fast flow defense. Alabama is an aggressive style, but a lot more disciplined in terms of their reaction skills.
And speaking of the Florida defense, let's flip it to the other side of the ball. What is your analysis? What can you tell people to look for from the Florida Gators defensively?
Well, they're a 4-3 front. They play a lot of nickel. They're young at corner. I think you can throw against their corners, and LSU is going to have some opportunities to do so. I like their defensive tackle. I think Easley and particularly Howard are really good players. They get good push up the middle. They've certainly been very disruptive. They were against Kentucky, as you see a big play here. That's Jay Howard there with the interception. They weren't nearly as effective against Alabama for obvious reasons. You're dealing with a very good offensive line, an offensive line that played very well against them. I think that the linebackers are good, in particular Bostic, the Mike backer, but the Will backer, Jelani Jenkins, are very good. I think the safeties are good, led by Ham. I think that this is a good athletic defense. They're not as deep in terms of experience, and I think the corners can be tested. LSU, I think, is going to see, as they want to stay committed to the running game as they always do, I think there's a chance that Florida can have some success, particularly with LSU's offensive line battling some injuries, and we'll see the availability and health and the amount of snaps that the frontline guys can get. That's going to be a challenge for LSU. But I think that eventually what you're going to see is Florida have to commit extra guys into the box. That is significant. That's where I think with the corner play, you can throw the football against these corners. You can deploy one of those safeties having to come into the box to defend the run, then that's going to limit the safety help that they can give to one of their young corners. And that's where I think Odell Beckham is developing into a big-time playmaker that they can use outside in the slot and find the right coverage mismatches. And then Ruben Randall certainly is a threat there as well. A couple of things that jump out to me I think can be significant here. I think that D'Angelo Peterson down the seam is something that they've not utilized that can be available in this game. As you effectively run the football as well as LSU can run the football, I think there's some opportunities to make some big plays down the seam at the tight end. They've not been able to do that. That's not been a big part of what they can do. But that's an easy throw to make and something. I think some short crossers I think can be had as well against a loaded front. So those are a couple of things to look for offensively for LSU against this Florida defense. Florida's ability to defend LSU's run with their base and not having to commit a safety in the box to defend the run is going to be the key to their defensive success if they can have any.
And Will Muschamp, of course, is the head coach. He's a defensive guy. He's been a defensive guy. How much of the defense is his, all of it? Is he calling the defensive calls each play?
He doesn't call them. He basically runs it. He's very, very involved in it. It's his defense, but it's not his entire defense, meaning he can't really do everything that he'd like to do in terms of his blitz pressure. He's again, young at corner, so that just creates some difficulties, but he is a little bit of chip off of Nick Saban that he's going to be multiple with his fronts. They do a good job with their stunt and twist package up front with the ends and tackles exchanging positions. They do a good job with their blitz package, but they're not as exotic as eventually I think he'd like to be, and that's just a result of first year, them inexperience in this system, and it's a little bit different than the defensive style that they've ran in the past. He'll be much like we talked about offensively when they get their pieces together. The athletes that they get on defense historically in recruiting, when they can get those edge rush guys and those big horses up front, and then they've got those backers that can be big and can run, they'll be really aggressive with their blitz packages, but they're a little bit limited what they can do now.
Keep in mind, too, we've made several comments here in the first hour about, they're not where Muschamp wants them and Charlie Weiss doesn't have all the guys. They're still a very good football team who is capable of beating LSU if LSU plays poorly on Saturday and they play a good ball game. This is not a one-sided matchup like Northwestern State or even like Kentucky. So, we don't mean to downplay how good Florida is. They'll be in a bowl game at the end of the season, and they're going to beat a lot of people, and they may win a game somebody doesn't think they're going to win. LSU hopes that's not this week.
Yeah, I think from a talent level standpoint, if you look at where Florida is, they're not where Alabama is. They're not where LSU is. I think they're comparable, although they're different in some areas. They certainly are at the level where Georgia is. Georgia's, I think, a little better in some spots. They're where Tennessee is. Tennessee's better in a couple of spots, but Florida's better in some other spots. They're comparable to where Auburn is, although I think Auburn's a little bit ahead, but comparable. It's just the biggest thing I would stress is this Florida team, based upon what it did schematically in the old system versus what they would like to do now, is different. So what they're having to do is kind of get off of what they normally would like to do offensively and defensively schematically to fit the personnel that they have. But once they get the personnel to fit what they want to do, I think it's going to be a better fit. So I think don't cry for Florida. Get them now because they're going to be a power coming, in my opinion, in 2 or 3 years. But right now, they're not where LSU in Alabama is. But you're right. I think it's more a case LSU would have to play poorly and lose it, as opposed to Kentucky. It would be very difficult for LSU to lose that game. You're right. They could if they were to lose the turnover battle. They were struggle in some areas, play poorly,
give up a couple of big plays.
Give up. All of a sudden, you get down. It's a different type of game. All of a sudden, you become having to be a pass-first team, and you have to get out of your running game because you're down 14 late. That becomes problematic more so against Florida than certainly against Kentucky, but that's what LSU's been able to avoid.
Here are some comments about the Florida defense from Coach Miles, some players, and Coach Will Muschamp.
We got to play blocks better up front, and that's something that we have seen throughout the year. It's not something that just happened Saturday night. We have felt that way throughout the year, that we've got to do a better job of playing blocks up front, and that's something that when you play a power running team, which LSU is, and they're going to get in their two back and do a nice job in the running game, we've got to do a better job of striking and blow delivery up front, and then disengaging when the opportunities presents itself.
It's going to be a huge challenge. Florida's a good ball club, as we know, so had some mistakes last week, but we'll get them fixed. Got a lot of film to watch on us and on them, so but we're looking forward to it.
They're very young, but they're very talented. They got some young guys on the team. They have a very talented front seven. But secondary-wise, they have a talented secondary. They're just some youth. So we see some things which we can expose, offensively against them. So we just got to keep building off that and just getting, the film room and just see some more things that we can do, which Bama did, to kind of help us out.
Let's take a look at the statistical comparison between LSU and Florida through 5 games. LSU 5-0, Florida 4-1. That's the important stats. Both teams very successful in the red zone, as you see at the bottom. Total offense, Florida with numbers. Numbers are skewed based on the opponents, but both teams are going to put numbers up all year long.
Well, Florida 19 for 21 in the red zone. 11 of those 21 were touchdowns, 52% clip there. But the biggest thing to keep in mind is what you just said. LSU's played a more difficult schedule. Florida has played a very easy schedule, save for last week. And, 15 yards, I believe, they were minus 17 in the second half rushing last week against Alabama. That was a very impressive defensive performance, but something that they've got to do a better job. And Will made a comment, and they feel they can be better. I think Alabama's running game was very effective. LSU's going to have to run the football. They're going to have to come off the ball a little better than they did against Kentucky because, if Florida is able to stop the run with their base, then that gives them a little bit of chance to hang in this game and for a little bit longer than, say, Kentucky could. And then that's where maybe some of those big plays could change it. But that's going to be the key, as I see it, is LSU going to stay committed to the running game, no question. Can they run the football and eventually wear down out Florida's defensive front, which, again, is better than West Virginia's, better than Kentucky's. It's better than Mississippi State's, actually.
And look at the graphic for the game this week. It's LSU and Florida. Florida ranked 17 in the AP, 18 in the USA Today, 4-1 overall, 2-1 in conference play with the loss to Alabama last week. Of course, as you know, LSU number 1 in the AP poll, number 2 in the USA Today, 5-0 overall. 2-0 in the SEC, defeated Kentucky 35-7 last Saturday in Tiger Stadium. Chris, next week, not next week when we do the program, but the weekend after that, the first BCS poll will be released, and that's going to be a little bit different than the AP and the coaches poll. The AP poll really plays no bearing going forward into that. It's nice to talk about it. LSU takes it as a compliment to be ranked number 1,
right.
But the BCS stuff is not that far from coming out for everybody. Give everybody a little hint of what may be happening there.
Well, to give you an idea, based upon the BCS, you've got 6 computer polls. 4 of those 6 are already out. What happens is they take the computer polls, they take every team that's the highest ranked and the lowest ranked and throw it out and average the other 4. So the computer poll is already in place for the most part. 4 of the 6 computer polls are in. Now, one other third of that process is the coaches poll. That's already out. The other third, the Harris poll, is going to be out. I participate in that, and that makes up the BCS. The projections are already out, and so I'll give them to you. Right now, Alabama would be 1, LSU, Oklahoma, Boise, and Oklahoma State, your top 5. That's how it would be today after this week's games, and we'll give you the update next week, and then the following week we'll be able to tell you, here the BCS rankings are out, because what they do to form this is they just use the AP poll in replacement of the Harris poll until the Harris poll gets out. So it gives you an idea. I've tracked this for years. I had the guys that run the numbers in the BCS for me do it, and it's been extremely accurate leading up to it. But here's the reality. If you're an LSU fan, you're an Alabama fan, you're in good shape. If you win out, you're in good shape to be in one of those top 2 spots. I think the teams that have maybe a little bit concern would be an unbeaten Clemson, an unbeaten Wisconsin, or an unbeaten Illinois, or an unbeaten Boise State. Those would have a hard time jumping. But I think that Alabama, LSU, and Oklahoma are in pretty good shape that if they run the table, obviously LSU, Alabama, one of them can't run the table. That's likely the way it's going to go. But a lot of football left to be played, a lot of good teams, a lot of stumbling blocks for every team if they don't take care of business. But that's how it would look at this point. I got Alabama, LSU, Oklahoma, Clemson, Wisconsin in my top 5 right now. But again, we vote officially in a couple of weeks.
We remind you, Tigers Roar comes at you live each and every Wednesday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Wednesdays on Pelican Sports TV, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, New Orleans. If you're catching us Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, keep in mind you got a replay going, but we certainly appreciate you watching the replay and spreading the roar about this program, Tigers Roar. When we come back, we'll speak to Brian Lazar of TigerBait.com, and then we'll get into plenty of breakdown on LSU. Chris Landry is an NFL scout, Fox Sports football analyst. I'm Tommy Krysan of Pelican Sports TV, and you are watching Tigers Roar.